You asked Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to change the leadership of the investigation into your former personal attorney, Michael Cohen.
No, not at all. I don't know who gave you that. That's more fake news. There's a lot of fake news out there.
So the Times also details how the president's attacks on the Russia investigation, which he's done publicly now more than 1,000 times by their count, it moved from a PR strategy to a legal strategy, and that includes attacking investigators on the case to raise questions about the legitimacy of law enforcement and to discredit witnesses.
All right, joining us now is Maggie Haberman, CNN political analyst and White House correspondent for the New York Times. She is one of the reporters on the Times article detailing the president's attacks on the federal investigations surrounding him. Maggie, you've been busy.
It's been a busy couple of days. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, because this is, we talk about this all the time. It's hard to keep track day in and day out of the different times that President Trump has possibly run afoul of obstruction of justice laws and rules. But your article is very comprehensive, and you look at what has transpired over the arc of 2 years. And when you do that, you realize it wasn't just asking Matt Whitaker to install Jeffrey Berman, who was a Trump ally. He wanted him to be in charge of the hush money payments. There was also asking Don McGahn to get rid of Robert Mueller, but McGahn didn't carry that out. There was asking Corey Lewandowski to get rid of Jeff Sessions, but that didn't happen. And so it's really helpful to see it all in one place. Do you have a sense of why these people, Matt Whitaker and Don McGahn and Corey Lewandowski, didn't follow through on the president's orders?
I think that Don McGahn considered it to be an inappropriate move legally if they were to go ahead and do that. I think that he thought it was going to open the president up to impeachment if he went ahead and did that. And I think that most people around the president think that. Corey Lewandowski did not fire Jeff Sessions because Corey Lewandowski doesn't work for the government, and that would have been inappropriate. And I think that even if Matt Whitaker had wanted to get Jeff Berman unrecused, I'm not sure that he could have. This goes through Department of Justice ethics officials, and this was cleared there. So you actually have a machinery that has worked pretty well. What you also have is a president who has wanted to control this to the extent that he can, and when he can't control it, to defang it. And that's a lot of what using allies in Congress to attack the investigations has done. The president's folks will say he's voicing opinions, he's asking questions, he didn't actually do anything, and that as a citizen he is entitled to do that. We aren't prosecutors, so we can't, make that estimation. All we can do is lay out what the facts were.
Maggie, walk us through your reporting on what happened with Matt Whitaker here, starting with the timeline here, because this has to be after the midterm election, after Jeff Sessions was pushed out, so November, December at this point.
Right. It was after he was pushed out, and it was around the time CNN had reporting that we also had that the president had called Whitaker very upset right after Michael Cohen had pleaded guilty to lying to Congress. Remember, that plea was in connection with the duration of time that a Trump Tower Moscow project was going on. In another phone call, the president asked Whitaker if it was possible to have Jeff Berman unrecused from the Cohen case. He had recused over I think it was some issue involving a law firm that Berman had worked for a while back. He wanted to see if that could be undone. It clearly was not undone. Berman was not put back in charge of the Cohen case. Berman is not recused from everything connected to Trump. He is not, as I understand it, recused from the investigation into the inaugural committee, for instance, this president's inaugural committee. So it was very specific to Cohen. Look, I think that the Southern District of New York investigation into Michael Cohen has spawned an outlet. And remember, that was a referral from Mueller. It began there. Mueller basically said, not mine, handed it off to Manhattan federal prosecutors. But that is a case that a lot of Trump advisors think presents a greater threat to him than the Mueller probe does. The Southern District can keep these things going for a very, very long time. Mueller, we have every reason to believe, is concluding his work soon.
And so is there a feeling among the people around the president that this is a real exposure to obstruction of justice?
There is a feeling that he has exposed himself to accusations that he has obstructed justice. They argue that he has not obstructed justice, and I don't expect them to change that argument. And their argument is, look, nothing was done, nothing changed. However, it does fit a pattern, as we have said here, of trying to control the various investigations that touched on him for whatever reason. I mean, is this because he's a 70-something-year-old man who was used to doing things a certain way in his private business, as his defenders say? Or is it that there is something there that he is concerned about? We have no way of knowing. We just know how he approached it.
Now, we heard the president in our lead into you respond to your reporting yesterday. I want to read you something he wrote this morning. He says, the press has never been more dishonest than it is today. Stories are written that have absolutely no basis in fact. The writers don't even call asking for verification. They're totally out of control. Sadly, I kept many in the business. In 6 years, they all go bust. Your reaction to that, Maggie?
My reaction is we've heard him say something like this repeatedly, but if he would like us to open up the door to the reporting process on dealing with his White House, we reached out to them on Friday. I sent several emails that went unanswered until yesterday. We went through a detailed list of what we were planning on reporting. They chose not to engage, and then afterwards, the president acts surprised. Now, whether his aides are not telling him what we are looking at, or whether this is a game and he knows what it is and he's pretending that he doesn't, I can't read his mind. But we certainly followed normal reporting practices and went over it at length with both the White House and Department of Justice.
Just to be crystal clear on that.
If this was news to them, it would be surprising.
Just to be crystal clear, his claim that the writers don't even call asking for verification, that's a lie. That's not true.
Well, that's not true. That's a lie, and I don't know whether he knows it's a lie or whether he is telling himself this is true, whether his staff doesn't tell him that we have reached out, but I find that awfully hard to believe that his staff did not brief him once again that this kind of a report was coming.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? So part of what I gleaned from your comprehensive reporting is how much people around him and close to him keep him from himself. So his impulses, where he wants people gone and he issues these orders because, as you say, maybe that's how it worked at the Trump organization, and they humor him, or they just don't do it, or they just buy time and slow roll it.
Yes, several advisors have said to me over the years, you wait until he asks you to do something 3 times in a row, because the first couple times it's usually just musing. So you wait and see whether he sticks to it and keeps going. I think in the case of wanting Mueller fired, that was something that he had harped on over many days. I think that in the case of Jeff Berman, it's not clear how many times he went back at that, but he has obviously been agitated about that for a while. And under normal circumstances, asking once with most presidents would be considered eyebrow-raising.
We're talking about the president's legal jeopardy here, perhaps the pattern of obstruction, perhaps the issue of corrupt intent, which comes up in your story. There's another person here who could be in some jeopardy, and it's Matt Whitaker. Matt Whitaker testified before the House of Representatives, the House Judiciary Committee, and he was asked very specific questions. At that point, it was based on the CNN reporting, and also you say the New York Times had reported also that there were conversations where the president had expressed displeasure with Matt Whitaker on the Cohen investigation, but he was asked directly about it, and he made this statement. Let's listen to Matt Whitaker here.
At no time has the White House asked for, nor have I provided, any promises or commitments concerning the special counsel's investigation or any other investigation.
Any other investigation would cover SDNY, would cover Michael Cohen in this case, correct?
Didn't he say ask for promises? Wasn't that his language?
Yeah, no,
or did he say we didn't discuss it at all?
Nor has asked for, nor have I promised, nor have I provided any promises or commitments. I have not been asked for promises or commitments.
Promises or commitments is the language that we're sticking to. He did not say, and we did not discuss it in any way, shape, or form. But I can't speak to what's in Matt Whitaker's head. I mean, I think that the question of whether he perjured himself before the House is something the House is looking at. It was clear immediately that day that was going to be something they were looking at. I can't establish whether that's true. All I can do is look at the scope of that denial and think that it's somewhat narrow.
One of the interesting things in the article also is that while the people around the president were trying to be, I guess, act as guardrails, perhaps just out of self-preservation, you talk about the private meeting that the president had with GOP lawmakers, and that they decided on a strategy to become the attack dogs against the Mueller investigation, and they were willing to do the president's bidding in wanting to go after Mueller. And I'm talking about Devin Nunes and Matt Gaetz, and I believe Jim Jordan might be in that crowd, and just how that whole strategy developed.
Right. Look, I mean, I think that whole strategy developed out of a desire to protect the president, and I think that we have seen that, frankly, play out over the last 2 years. I think in many ways the congressional piece of this raises equal, if not greater, questions because Congress is supposed to be an independent branch of the government. And then the criticism of the Trump administration has been that it has treated the Republican Congress that it had for the first 2 years of his term as if it was an extension of the executive branch. That's obviously not what Congress is supposed to do. I do want to say it is legitimate to ask questions about how this investigation came to be. It is legitimate to ask questions about the motives of people who were fired and then write books. I think all of those are totally fair questions. The problem is that the Trump White House, as we've seen all morning, treats, Andrew McCabe as a truth teller when it serves their purpose and then liar and leaker when it doesn't. And that has been the case over and over with people. I think that some of this is also not new. Bill Clinton's folks had a strategy to attack the congressional investigation into him, to attack the special prosecutor investigating him. It's just that it was kept separate from the president's mouth and the White House. It was a separate apparatus. And the fact that everything is overlapping here is part of what makes it unusual.